Hi, everybody, and welcome to the First and Last Word Poetry Series. I'm Gloria Mindock, and Harris Gardner is our co host this evening, and we welcome you to the reading series. Our first reader is Kathleen Aguero. Her latest book is World Happiness Index. Her other collections include After That, Investigations, The Mystery of the Girl Sleuth, Daughter of, The Real Weather, and Thirsty Day. She has also co-edited 3 volumes of multicultural literature for the University of Georgia Press. She teaches in the Solstice low-residency M.F.A program and in Changing Lives Through Literature, an alternative sentencing program. And I give you Kathy.
Doll in the Bedroom, Wenham Historical Museum. I am the one in the gray blanket lying in the splintered cradle at the foot of the bed. My bonnet is dusty, my face brown ash, my smile sewn in place. I've been here since Sarah Hale, accused of witchcraft, was cleared by the good judge, her husband. Sometimes I think I remember the children hanging me in her stead, then coffining me here for expiation. After closing time, I restless roam, just as you fear I might. The pretty dolls stay mute, stay still, eyes unblinking as I whisk by, too big to fit in the French doll house with its warning, don't touch, its fancy carved furniture, tiny chandeliers. All night I ride the circling train to nowhere, crying, all aboard. And the next poem is based on a painting called The Apotheosis of Washington. It was by John James Barrett in 1805, and I saw it, I think it was called the Lee Museum House in Marblehead. The Apotheosis of Washington, after the painting by John James Barrett. Washington basks in earthly adoration, arms extended, palms open in a gesture of blessing. He's regal, triumphant. Why did these anti-papists commission a work echoing Titian's Assumption of the Virgin Mary? But Titian's Mary looks toward heaven, carried on a cloud by cherubim. Here, Washington reclines on what look like bells of cloth made from cotton picked by slaves, fingers blistered, sweat steaming. An angel strains to haul him up a plank of light, while Father Time, in a short black robe that reveals his manly thighs, gives an assist, kneeling behind Washington, lugging him out of his crypt. Against his tomb, a woman leans, elbow on knee, head in hand, eyes downcast. A shield inscribed E pluribus unum, a metal helmet, a sword litter the ground as if she's dumped them in disgust. On her shoulder, a staff crowned by a liberty cap, the kind worn by Roman slaves, while an eagle, sharp beak open, spreads its wings just behind. His back to the viewer, a defeated warrior slumps, tomahawk cast to the ground, while George looks past them beaming, the worshipful crowd just out of sight. Farther left, tiny figures, faith, hope, and charity dwarfed by our first president's magnificence. One is busy with 3 clinging babies. Another hides her face in her friend's lap. If these figures are grieving, what is it for? Washington's death, or the assured way he assumes Mary's spot? Perhaps they're just exhausted. And doesn't the third woman, her hair covered by a blue mantle, remind you of the Mother of God? Is her hand lifted in tribute, or is she saying, get a look at who's taken my place, a man and a general? Isn't that always the way? And this next poem was part of a project at the Peabody Essex Museum. They had they had jingle dancers, which is a healing Native American dance, and then they had a kind of frame of a sculpture that everybody put these jingle poems on, and some of us were invited to see the dance and to write about it. And so this was my response. Dance of the Two Sisters, after seeing the jingle dance at Peabody Essex Museum. After the baby was cut from my belly, something went wrong. A tube down my nose into my stomach, a bag on a pole. And I, in my anger, refusing to speak, lay quiet as a corpse for 3 days. What could visitors do but shift in their seats near the foot of my bed? When I was alone, my sister entered, leaned over the bed rail, and lay her cool hands with their elegant fingers upon me to perform without sound, without motion, the dance of two sisters. It was then I softened and spoke. It was then I made friends with the tube. And this poem, I was part of I guess, a project, a collaboration at the Ipswich Art Association, which was really interesting because you were asked to write a poem in response to a work of art, and you had also submitted a poem which a different artist created a visual response to. So this is my response to the painting that I was asked to write about. Seaside Wedding. After the painting, Sultry Beach by K.H. Thayer. The bridesmaids, their dresses belled like upside-down flowers, their faces, pistils, waiting for pollination, walked to the edge of the shore for photographs. Their delicate shoes abandoned in a heap like the divorce that eventually followed. But now the beach is empty as the marriage, as the house scrubbed clean and vacant, its occupants moved separately into smaller apartments. The ghost seagulls coming in for a landing just hang. The bridesmaids themselves have grown wary, dresses thinned and faded to old blossoms or long ago given away. The train of the bride's tulle dress transformed into a cloud that hangs like a paper shade over sunlight, and the memory of that day just a bruised smudge along the horizon. Sand smoothed of footprints, not even a plover's small tracks. The guests departed years ago to change into comfortable shoes, their swollen feet propped on their coffee tables. The beach no one will visit again, and the sky, the bruised sky. And this last poem is modeled after the children's book, which I'm sure you all know, Goodnight Moon by Margaret Wise Brown. Good night, moon over Gaza. Good night, moon. Good night, drones. Good night, sobs. Good night, moans. Good night, lost paper, pens, and books, soccer ball, teddy bear, paints, and blocks. Good night to the voices that shout in the dark. Good night to the rockets, their orange-red arc. Good night to the smoke, its choking and stink. Good night to erasers, to chalkboard and ink. Good night, schoolyard. Good night, teachers. Good night, body bags carried in stretchers. Good night, hospital, collapsed by a bomb. Good night, someone's leg. Good night, someone's arm. Good night, shards of glass that sparkle and slice. Good night to the moths, and good night to the flies. Good night, Gaza City House. Good night, tent in Rafah. Good night, Mama's singing. Good night, Papa's laughter. Good night, muddy water. Good night, moldy bread. Good night to the bandages around Ahmad's head. Good night, hungry kitten. Good night, hungry rat. Good night, hungry brother and sister and aunt. Good night, my best friend, still my double star. Good night to Hind, trapped in a car, hungry and thirsty, alone with her dead. We know nothing about this, the IDF said. Good night, sirens. Good night, fear. Good night, soldiers everywhere. Thank you very much.
Well, Kathleen, that was certainly a wonderful selection. Thank you very much. Our next featured poet is Jenny Factor, and her first collection is Unraveling at the Name, which was a Lambda Literary Award finalist. Her just released collection, Want the Lake, published by Hen Press this year, centers philosophy, women's stories, and community. Jenny is a lecturer in poetry at Caltech and a Brandeis University student of 18th-century women's poetry circulation networks. Please welcome Jenny Factor.
Hi, Kathy, thank you so much. Gloria and Harris, thank you so much for the invitation. And Richard, I have found a poem about painting to fit in with this ekphrastic theme that we will go to in a moment. My heart's still beating very fast from the last reading. This is a very challenging time for all of us, I think, who are living quite far, I think, all of us from the Middle East. And it's a very painful time. I think we have many of us people that we've lost and are worried about. So I just kind of wanted to have my moment with that. As a person with family in Israel. Anyway, I wanted to start though, as a mother with a child who's going to be married at the end of next week. And it's very exciting. And as part of my excitement, I wanted to share a poem about the challenges of being a mother. And this is a poem written after a cross-country move. And so the voice is the voice of a mother to a child, except it's an adult child. And the location is the name of the poem. And so 165 Cambridge Park Drive, day 2. I pause for a moment to laugh at myself. Not 3 hours after I told you, when you're out running, honey, be careful of ticks. I find myself wanting to text you back the opposite. Sweetheart, there's a field near the new apartment. Come join me. It's filled with bunnies. I'm standing in grasses, tickling my shins. Brown field rabbits and lazy hop, just a yawn at the base of the shafts. And above, tiny brown birds chirp and pop, and one red wing is winging from tip to tip, her touch lighting the twilight like a flame. Darling, I have been terrified for days. I couldn't help but warn you about something. I have been alone, driving fast on streets unfamiliar. I've been unloading boxes as heavy as myself into and out of cars. I've been shopping and buying my ways toward knowledge, toward controlling something. I've been second guessing myself, the new cost of eggs, the apartment I chose so quickly for this cross-country move. And then I catch myself here at the edge of a rainy field. And I want to make you promise to take your bike here into the wildness. I want to make you promise, sun on your bare legs, to run and run. Oh, mother, I imagine you mock. Be safe, be sure-footed. How am I supposed to do both at the same time? Oh, dear, please forgive me, won't you? Didn't you once say to your father that consistency is overrated? So I'm a mother like every other. One hand pushes you forward, while the other is all stop sign. But look, here's what I'm really saying. I am terrified 80 times each hour, but moving out into the grasses anyway, because I want to know what's here. My advice isn't wisdom, just footnotes to a text I'm still writing, dispatches from life's field office, postcards from a battleground of desire and fear. Listen, darling, the headline isn't "I'm terrified." The headline is "I'm here." All right, so this poem's a little bit of a brainful. Hope you'll forgive me for that. There is an artist named Ewan Uglow. He's British. Here, I hold this up. He does these figures, these kind of naked figures. And it turns out, which I know because I watched a documentary on the BBC, that these figures are made over like years. He had a woman he started painting when she was in law school, and she was a Supreme Court justice by the time he had finished the painting, which is kind of a problem because if you're painting a figure and the person's going to grow in age, right? Like things are going to change. And so what he does is he creates a set. You can kind of see that there's a set here, right? And then he puts like hammers, nails into a board and things so that she can re-find her place. But he also had problems, like some of his models didn't want to keep going as long as it was going to take him over years, to paint them. So this is a poem called Joanna at 2:00, and it has quotes directly from the painter. And for me, it's a little bit about art. And the incredible complexity and the risk of making things, which seems so important to where we are. All right, Joanna at 2:00. And the voice is his, of course. He is the artist. Joanna at 8, 9, 10, even noon. The buses pass by, the taxis, the light. She is all raked over. She becomes red for a moment, or blue. But that's no good. It's the pink I'm after. Do you see it there on the little nub of her heel, the hyperextended knee? And then differently here at mid-calf, where the razor stopped. All the sus and intonation of Rose. Who can get magic moments in 6 hours a day? I'll ask you that question. I ask you that. You get a few magic moments in a week. The same thing happens with the light, but Joanna at 2:00, sometimes she becomes magical. It's when you get to see the idea almost happening in front of you. Her left knee just so, half gauged up to capture my mark on the blue board. Her right foot tossed away as far out as I can ask her to go. See how she must work with her whole leg until with a wiggle it hops into position. And there, above the mons, falls open the pubis, that mauve patch. Then she wraps her fingers around the one nail I hammered hard into the board, head flipped onto an elbow, wakeful, see the lines of it. At times, one has to make a thing go much further and then paint it out. That's how I remember watching her in my dream, on the chair in the lobby, her breath so close he could eat it, and he stopping suddenly, the wet, "You want this?" And she, "Yes, your finger all the way in there, now." And they ride together, the cruise, the cream. But what she was after was before. It was his full weight, the heavy sack of him upon her, the lobby open, those catwalk eyes, and me watching as she discovered again and again the rich, reckless rinsing through of the body's own making. We think the letdown can save us, but it is rather every messy incursion rising from outside the self's own foam. Everything in the painting can be violated. Everything is in position to be destroyed. At times, one has to make a thing to find the very outer limit, like walking the perimeter of a field in the dark. You can fix 3 things that are wrong, but try to fix all 5 and the painting fails. She makes the emergency. She, Joanna. I make the measurements on an indigo board, then wine shattering against the floor. I find I don't drop an idea easily. The painter and the model are in crisis. I need her desperately. She knows that as well as I do. And she needs, I don't know what she needs, but our crisis is somehow parallel and alike. Another little experiment that I played with a few years ago was to think about what it would be like to paint a scenario in sound. And this one is eluding me, but it's called Song Beside a Sippy Cup. And you'll understand the scenario, but the idea was to make it sing. And of course, we will not be making it sing if we can't find it because it looks like the marker. Here it is. All right, the song beside the sippy cup. In the never truly, ever truly dark, dark night, ever pink zipped, slat cut, dark parked light, you late touch my toes with your broad, flat, own horny nailed, cold toes, clock, talk, wake, shock. In the ever truly, never truly long, long night, our little snoring, snarling, wild child, mild child, starling, darling wakes every 2, 3 you sleep hours in the never truly, ever truly lawn, brawn, fawn dawn. So here's a poem in defense of shopping. It's called I Remade Myself for Several Hours. I remade myself for several hours in the quiet consecration of sales. All those selves on hangers, shelves, the low voices of shopkeepers brushing my ears. The kiss of fabric, satin, gauze, my body sheathed and unsheathed like a sword. I am potent now, the owner of bags that dangle dazzlingly from each hand. Behind me, a quiet shop closes its doors. On this February twilight, these lives re-beginning, with the chainmail of businesses shut down, the whispers of shopkeepers, those watchers. I'm always turning my back on some possibility I could have bought simply with these 2 coins I saved out of habit, for a lover, for the me I meant to be to arrive. Twilight says, go home, it's beginning. The murmur of harvest soup on the burner inside and a child's voice asking a question whose answer must be improvised in smoke and memory gleaned from air. Lay the bags by the door and listen. Do you hear it? Where all is habitual, the folded question mark, possibility, is also here. And let's see, one last poem. Well, it's not really a great last poem, but let's go with it anyway. It's called Pen Pals, and it's in honor of Kathy's really wonderful poem about Facebook. So here's another version of what the internet offers us at its best and worst. Pen Pals. Right now, I like you best when you are flat on paper, scrolled in ether messages, and on white sheets, ink-stained, addressed, and stamped. In humid rooms, so awkward I get cramps, we sip in silence, swipe WAP book passages. Far better white sheets, ink-stained, addressed, stamped, to open in leisure and get damp on sometime thoughts of sweet permissages, or real-world talk more intimate than flat. Granted, you're not ambiguous. You prattle like a girl, then she. These discourses come on white quartered sheets, ink-stained and stamped. No mad provocatrix, but damn, you pack a punch in phrases, scrapbook images, until I'm sure I'd like you to be flat, turd. By the way, such scribbles make romance. Let words do what hands do. Console, caress, on folded sheets. Our dailiness gets stamped to bear no risk of touch. I won't play tramp to loose your stiff boy, though I'm capable. Would probably even like it quite well flat on white sheets, undressed, ink-stained, licked like stamps. And on that inglorious note, thank you so much for the opportunity to read.
Oh, Jenny, that was a very strong selection. Thank you for your offerings. I'm sure we all appreciate it. Moving on to our third featured poet, Richard Hoffman almost needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. He is the author of 5 books of poetry, Without Paradise, Gold Star Road, which is the winner of the New England Poetry Club's Sheila Martin Award, Emblem, Noon Until Night, which received the Massachusetts Book Award, and People Once Real. His other books include the memoirs Half the House and Love and Fury, Interference and Other Stories, and the essay collection Remembering the Alchemists. I give you Richard Hoffman.
Thank you, Harris, and thank you, Gloria. And I'm going to try to hold up my end after those 2 wonderful readings. What a pleasure to be here this evening, wherever here happens to be when you're on Zoom. I'm going to read a poem by a poet named Wayne Hill. I came across this in the English Poetry Journal PN Review. And it speaks to what I think is at the heart of what I do, which is a kind of distrust of and love for language. It's called Ordinary Rain. There's a total solar eclipse here every day. We call it night because we have small names for ordinary things. My God, what we could call the rain. Just to pursue that theme a little bit further, this is a poem called Vaccine. What is the word for the way the starling's sheen and the carapace of the Japanese beetle seem alike? And if I find it, will the dying stop? Words don't come easily to me. I used to think they were afraid of me. They hid in my chest, in my belly. Will the right ones make the dying stop? What word is there for the way some words, unsaid, erase you? For our hope not to hurt again, for what to say to make the dying stop. Recently, my brother Bobby, who passed away a long time ago, has been on my mind. We were about a year apart. Well, we were a year apart, and we went everywhere together until he got sick. And I think what's kicking this up is right now I have 2 grandchildren who are a year apart, and seeing their intimacy and their connection has really brought that loss in my life to the fore in a way that I'm trying to examine. This is a poem from People Once Real called Late Elegy. Too young to know better, my brother and I ate flowers, pink rose petals. Their veins, I think, convinced us we could. The thin capillaries in the flesh of roses heavy on our family's wicker trellis or hanging over the neighbor's rickety fence. We smuggled salt from the kitchen, sat in the grass, feasted, laughed. The part of me that might have remembered what we said was not yet alive. I only know we wanted so much to be good, we must have believed we weren't. one petal at a time, a little salt. My brother and I ate flowers. And when you finish a book, it seems to me there are always more poems that come that you think, gee, I could have put that in the book. But what's happening is, of course, the continuity of one's emotional life. So this is a more recent poem about missing my brother called This Close. Little brother, I have forgotten our secret, but I remember your cupped hand and steamy breath in my ear. I believe you are near, adjacent my 5 hungry senses, with me as if in the spaces between my fingers, between the letters of my name, between the numbers of my years, in sounds too high for ears, too low for even foot soles. Sometimes I can almost see you, shadow of a helpless fish in the curl of a breaking wave, or hear you like halyards clinking on wobbling masts in a foggy harbor. And recently, the grieving animal I am cooked up your likeness in a dream. You, recognizably you, but nothing like the way I remember you, your round face intent upon surviving. I never wonder who you might have become, never think of you as almost, rather as weightless counterweight, as abstract afterward, ungone, a visitor from nowhere. You are where all the waters go, where I take myself to soothe myself, to find a way to understand your absence, how aging I grew into it, grew onto it like a trellis. Is it your death or mine or ours or everyone's I am moving through the whole length of this life you left so early? This is a poem about one of my favorite activities. Uh, it's called a summer nap. I dreamed I had died and didn't tell anybody. It was my death, none of their business. When I met the angels, they were all the same birds I'd been hearing, uncomprehending all my life. And when I woke, I recalled the way their singing felt, but no words, not in this world. Though I'm now convinced there's more joy to be had than I ever believed I might allow myself. Well, this is a poem called At the Rally. And I think what rally I'm talking about is probably clear in the poem. I wonder at these men, some of whom I've known since we were children, sons who have grown warlike and hard, though I remember them cherubic in gently falling snow with curls and red cheeks, laughing guilelessly. Then I remember further my own young cruelty, mocking someone's mother, and the blood shed then, a punch, a rock to the head, 12, 13, back when I was constantly afraid and hid in a callous fury, always needing to prove my immunity to injury, locked away from love. Now I can't sleep for fear of how their loud boasts might soon become war and all of us ghosts. This is a recent poem called Pax Americana. As far as I can tell, the empire's still the crucified. As far as the eye can see, hectares of crosses, both sides of the road, their anguish bound for distribution to the cities and dope-sick towns that turn to gray stone and enlistment bonuses. Now rows of solar panels in the stolen fields, both sides of the road, in a sodden week of rain, word of another friend's overdosed daughter, and mine so hurt she can only wail long syllables trying to tell me what's just happened to her life. And on the same road, but far from here, trucks as far as the eye can see hold food and medicine for refugees and are refused by men well armed with crude maps of a future world. This one's done for, as far as I can tell. It died of cruelty. As far as I can tell, centurions still gamble. Who, in which field, which row, accused of God knows what, will be first to succumb, and the women will be forced to carry the war to term again and be responsible for cleaning it all up afterward. Everything's like looking through a dirty window. No let up in sight, the rain not washing anything. Soldiers turn children to meat and bloody rags, take off their helmets and thumbs up, snap a selfie that ends up in a magazine about investments. On both sides of the road, there are walls going up that at home in the empire, most are grateful for, since what is done with our tribute hurts to hear. High tension lines from the fields of crosses hum, and echoing hammers ring, building God knows what. Um, this is a poem that was written for my friend Mossab Abu Toha, Palestinian poet, who you may have heard actually on Fresh Air today, being interviewed by Terry Gross. If you haven't heard that interview, I recommend it to you. I'm sure you can find it online. This is a poem called Gaza Aftermath. Why would we call a poem an aftermath about Gaza? Well, it was written in the aftermath of the previous of the last 5 assaults on Gaza, each one of which killed hundreds of Gazans. And this was written as a letter to Mossab, Gaza Aftermath. Shout not, yeah. I'm sorry, I'll start over. Shout not, yeah, not kill, but come on, hella money. Fires in the street, drones in the air, a love poem speared and flapping on a crooked pike of rebar. Death, listen, for your own good, stop consorting with murderers. It gives the wrong impression. We owe you after all, and all of us are good for it. Before the first door opened with old designs, the story of it all was right there in the book, how fear becomes hatred, if you read it right. I used to think we are here to help one another, believe all this is real and sometimes beautiful. I only think that sometimes now. Which words at least won't make things worse? Which stars are stars and which surveillance satellites? Remember, there are 2 sides to every dollar. An elegy claws its way up grief's hoarse throat, a dirge that could fracture your rib cage, calling to a world where such singing might bring peace. In the rubble, a child's remains are unearthed right there, dead center in our future. And a photo goes viral as in vain we mumble ancient poems. The weight of dread is no lighter when shared. Barbed wire rusts, but razor wire just gleams. You can change a map. A calendar is different. I'm going to finish with a little poem called Rune. A day nears, feast of a saint unborn, unlike our forebears or any we have known. We know how dark our powers kept in darkness, a broken lock, a stopped clock, masks and lies. When we wake, that unexampled day, will we believe ourselves free or broken? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Richard. That was incredible. And really, tonight, all of you, wow. And now we come to our open mic. So we have 5 slots open, and then Harris will close us out with the 6th. Is there anyone that would like to read? Would you raise your hand? Okay, whoops, the screen just switched on me. Raise your hand again, I'm sorry. Okay, Tom Mella, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I haven't been to one of these before. It's really quite extraordinary. Great readers. Kathy's poem that I think was tongue-in-cheek about the fighting in Oslo and all that sort of stuff, it made me think of this poem. It's called My Version. In the dark catacombs of marriage, our love is so chemically rich. Words more ignite than clarify. Conversation, a rickety bridge. I toss pebbles, you are struck by stones. You send breezes, gusts spin me around. On our well-worn path, we lose our footing. Flailing, we pull each other down. I have stared at the ceiling while you sleep. I walk the bewildered dog at 3. I learn silence, the secrets it keeps. I project onto my silent screen all your delusions and denial, my earnest groping for truth. What should be debate and compromise spirals into outrage claims of certitude. Though we create our own private hell, you and I keep stealing like thieves, back to each other, wounded, mute, shell-shocked with gratitude and relief.
Thank you. Someone else, please raise your hand. Carla, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I think I will just read a very short poem called Chill Season. What is the season of mud or slush or flood? What is a chill season? This season, the one my bones ache in, the one my neck shivers with wind in, the fat season that hugs the snow even as days linger longer, the season that dangles shadows, that crosses boundaries from ice to slush fluidly, that returns where a single skunk cabbage rooted in a bed of oak leaves, soaked in the melt, shoots to the sky its first red bloom. This chill season that fools the snow to thinking it can resist ephemeralness, this season whose untrodden trail begs me to follow. That's it. Thank you.
Ellen Steinbaum.
Thank you so much. And what a delight to hear Kathy and Richard and to be introduced to Jenny's poems. As soon as Kathy started, I just thought I needed to read this. This is a poem that I wrote for Kathy and Richard about 10 years ago. It's called Only Connecting. I log on and see two friends announce their marriage. They've been together decades, share a grandchild. I have made assumptions I must now revise. Together all these years unwed, I cheer their non-convention, wonder why they've married now. And then I see her at the gym, offer congrats, and she, embarrassed, says she was filling in her profile and it turned somehow into news. Updates from him seemed to reflect a new sanctity, a new appreciation for what they had done years before. So I send him congratulations and am prompted, send a gift. And where it's usually the Starbucks card, now inexplicably, I'm urged to send him collar stays, something I wouldn't have thought of on my own, thank you, because though I'm fond of him, I've never thought to send him gifts, and collar stays would hardly be my choice since I've seen him only wearing open collar shirts, and now it sounds as if I've noticed a little too much, and that's a little awkward, him with that newly married status. And does anyone buy collar stays as gifts these days? I see they're sold at Tiffany for the man of distinction in silver, monogrammed, but this item is no longer available. So it seems that even Tiffany has seen the writing on the wall, which is sometimes news and sometimes just a statement that things continue as they are.
David Mushan, excuse my pronunciation of your name.
That's okay. It's Maischen. I grew up in a German community and was grown before I realized that lots of people can't pronounce Maischen the first time. I've been immersed in the last few years in the landscapes that shaped me in South Texas. This is a short one called Testament in two parts. One, field dust, caliche, mesquite. A creek named Agua Dulce by those who came before. This creek adrift in bare, dry silt on a scrub brush plain. Fathomless sky, wisps of cloud, heat staggering the light. Weeks and sometimes months before the rains came. Thunderstorm, gully washer, floodwater rains. Drown your cattle, drown your neighbor, drown yourself rains. 2, we came from the quietude of dust, from the window pane tremor of thunder and thirst. We stood in the rows of sorghum and cotton and corn that sprang up when the rains came and cooled us, when the rains came and washed us clean. It is such a pleasure to be here.
Laughlin.
Hi, great to be here. Wonderful to hear Kathy and Jenny and Richard. Thanks, Harrison, Gloria. This wonderful virtual reading. And maybe with the themes that started out with ekphrastic work, deciding to read ekphrastic poem. I've been writing poems in response to Somerville artist Matt Carano's paintings, and he's actually been painting in response to poems. This is in response to one of his paintings. It is called Blue-Green Fog. Drifting beyond horizon's edge into the blue-green fog of tomorrow, my red speck of boat is mere memory now in an ocean sky without end. Motor shot, oars cracked, broken, current and winds whisper nearly imperceptibly along the gunnels. Dreaming beyond fog of some grip of land or sand beach, I spy a startle of rocky cliffs, sandstone and shale rising up to menace and hint at jagged unseens below this shrinking nautical mile. No sign of trees, vegetation, fresh water, or habitation. Dangling beyond words or dock lines to the familiar, I listen for songs from the depths through my hull, cast some redness on the ocean sky, and feel for returning ripples, watch for gull or albatross, and wait for what will become. Thank you.
And now Harris will close us out. Harris, take it away.
Okay, this poem is reflective of the season just past. It's called Entomophobia. And most of you probably know that that's a fear of insects. So this is a response to John Clare's poem, Insects. Oh, you little gossamer creatures, how shall I feature you in these trembled lines of mine? You wing about, borne on airy streams, then you land to inhabit my dreaded dreams. Your hungry hum sounds the alarm as you dart about in starry night. How I suffer at my plight when your built-in GPS settles you on my sweaty skin. Should I surrender and let you win? Your buzzy whine signals your whetted appetite. I tent my bed sheets lest you alight. Though I plot the path to my escape, my mind sees your salivating maws agape. Your keen scent homes in on me, your nocturnal feast. Of all heaven's creations, you are deemed the very least. No retreat, I shall not give in to minute, monstrous, biting beasts.